My name's Sasha Pete, and I'm joined by the legendary Marshall Soper, a man who some say is the best striker that's ever played for our great country. But definitely goes without question. In the 1980s, he was our best centre forward without doubt. Thank you very much, Marshall Soper, for joining us today.
Always a pleasure to engage in conversation with the real public.
Oh, that's fantastic. So, Marshall, maybe you can tell us, you grew up you're a Newcastle boy, you grew up in the Hunter region.
I did, and I still got a connection there. I was only there yesterday, actually, helping with one of the local teams. And as I spoke to earlier, I work overseas, but I'm here through the COVID pandemic. It's not safe in the country I'm working with at the moment, so I'm here in Australia. And I'm still trying to help out youth, and hopefully we can get round to carving a pathway, especially from those country areas. And I'm from a small place just north of Newcastle called Raymond Terrace. So I've got a close connection with the Hunter and still do with the Jets. Even though I'd never played for the Jets, I was there on a coaching role back in 2010. So fantastic. Very close to still.
So that's brilliant. So Marshall, how did you fall in love with our great game?
Look, I like I said, from a country area and even from a rugby league area, which was Raymond Terrace, but it was a game that I found intriguing because it was so complex, so difficult, and being a stubborn boy, I just wanted to try and master those skills. So I would not just train with a team. I would go out and do my own training, as many of the other players in Australia have to do if they want to really try and press themselves to make it in this very difficult game.
Fantastic. So talk to me about your junior experiences. What were they like?
Well, I came from humble beginnings, to be honest, and I was probably one of the guys that should never make it in football. To a degree where I've come from a very small third division club that play in the Northern Football Federation. And it was one where, I had to even travel into Newcastle sometimes with friends or something to even get a game. I remember I played for a club which is called Western Bears, just west of Newcastle, and quite a predominant club. And when I was about 15, I got the opportunity to join them from junior ranks. And like I said, I was only 15 at that stage. And listen, I'd have to even hitch a ride to try and get out there to train. So it was very, very difficult for a boy from Raymond Terrace to do that. Like I said, those times were a little bit safer to hitch a ride, but I used to ride just to get the training, for that matter. And really taught you values, it taught you appreciate everything you sort of clawed your way to get. I was lucky enough to play first team football at the age of 15 and 9 months. Not successfully, mind you, but after the rocky road of success and failure, really drew me, really pushed me, for that matter, to train extra hard. And I remember a time where I would be, I set myself a target one year of saying to myself, I'm going to train every single day for 1 year. Mm-hmm. And I did bar one day, and that was Christmas Day, because my mum wouldn't let me train.
Wow.
Still have regrets for missing that one day.
Wow.
And I tell young people of today that. I tell them, look, it takes obsession to really make that level. You have to be driven and you have to be obsessed because, and I say this to many young players, because they are doing that overseas. The young players have a pathway and they train more and more and more. And so we have to try and create or simulate an environment in Australia which they have overseas, not just in Europe. Asia are pushing towards that now, where their academies are almost full-time.
Yeah.
you know. So I think I was driven enough to be able to set those targets already at a very young age.
So did it come from internally? You internally set those targets, or did you have, family or mentors that pushed you along?
I definitely had mentors. I was very fortunate, very, very fortunate to run across a former great player who played for Everton in England by the name of Mike Trebilco. And Mike Trebilco scored a couple of goals in the FA 66 FA Cup final, I think, as well. And he taught me the disciplines and the fundamentals of being a striker, a true goal scorer for that matter. Along with being a pretty good athlete for my age. I mean, I was a middle distance runner, represented the area up there in middle distance running. So the athletic background plus good mentors around me, lucky to get good mentors around me, may I say that. Very fortunate. Otherwise, I don't think it would have panned out as well as what it did for me. And that's one of the things I try to give back to the game at this moment is that I hope other former national players and A-League players really try to help out the youth in carving a pathway, because this country right now don't have that pathway as it should be. You know what I mean?
I understand. So you get your first senior debut shy of your 16th birthday. I think it's brilliant. We look at the vast majority of lads that have made it really well at a high level, played for Australia. There's a similar story. They're making it, first senior football, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19 years old, right? Playing first team football. So you already played a number of years before Apia come knocking. So you've played with men for, a good 5 years, right? So you're well seasoned before you get your first game for Apia. What was that like?
Well, with Apia came knocking. I was the Golden Boot winner in the Northern Federation, okay, as well. I was fortunate that a former player who resided in Newcastle, saw me play, who was a former goalkeeper for Apia Laika. And God willing, Dave Maguire was the guy's name, and he drove me down there for a 20-minute trial at Apia Laika. 20 minutes, that's all they gave me.
Yeah.
And the truth be, and this is a story in itself. I was fortunate, a ball floated over, hit me on the shin, not on the foot, on the shin, and dribbled into the corner, and they signed me up on that loan. So without a bit of luck, may not have made it.
Yeah, I don't know about that. 49, just shy of 50 appearances. I think you scored a goal in, your track record was a goal in every second game, over 20-something goals. And then you get signed by the legendary Doc, Tommy Docherty, Sydney Olympic come knocking. And it's now getting a point to a time where I'm a young boy and I'm sitting on the fence watching you play. So tell me about Tommy and that first year at Sydney Olympic and how that sort of percolated.
Well, look, Sydney Olympic was probably, well, at least the biggest club in New South Wales, financially, supporter base, and everything else. Apia also was a fairly strong club as well. I had two pretty good seasons at Apia, but look, Sydney Olympic came along, and funny enough, the very first game I played against was Apia of all teams, and I scored twice. I was very fortunate to score twice in a pre-season cup game. But the meeting the Doc, and the Doc is a legend, at Manchester United, and exploits are well and truly known. A true character of the game, you might say that. very flamboyant and not afraid to speak his mind. And well, look, there were times. Look, we locked horns together, and he told me a few home truths, and I told him a few home truths. But in all that, we did win silverware.
Mm.
Actually, my first year at Sydney Olympic, I was given the captaincy, and we won the National Cup in the end. Under just before Tommy Docherty had left, Manfred Shaper took over that first year, and we played a team from Melbourne, Heidelberg United, in the two-legged playoff, and quite fiery games, 2 fiery games as well.
Yes.
If I remember. But a successful year for me as well on the goal scoring chart. I think I finished up just a goal behind, or if not level. I can't quite remember with who was the top goal scorer I think it might be Doug Brown. Is that right? At that stage, Dougie Brown. But getting back to Tommy Docherty, look, he had his way and of taking the team, and it was we at Sydney Olympic always had to try and entertain first, the game second, because that's what the crowd expected. They expected to be entertained. And look, we scored a lot of goals, but we conceded a few as well.
Yes.
And so our form in the table was maybe not as well as it could have been.
Okay. So it's interesting you say that, because you also had the players to play, right? You had...
without doubt.
So just to name a couple of players in your time there. So you had your Chris Colancis, you had Peter Catholis, all players are very, very brilliant that fed you. Some of the best players in Australia were feeding you.
Yeah, and the captain of New Zealand, Ricky Herbert, at the back.
Ricky Herbert, yep.
So and from Gary Meyer, Graham Jennings on one side, Chris Galantis, it was star packed. Of course, it was. And the midfield was awesome, and it's really, really strong team throughout Patikas, people like that.
Yeah. So who can? So what I remember of you, Marshall, as a young boy, right? You coming to Melbourne, and at the time, so I was supporting Footscray just in the early years, and then later South Melbourne, is you scoring, one of your many goals, and you scored many goals in your NSL career, and that big arm after you score, the wind up, and then the hand raise. How did you come up with that celebration?
I was a big fan of Mike Shannon, who used to play for Southampton, and his celebration was exactly the same. And look, it's just something that happened when I was younger, and it sort of stuck. It stuck when I was actually playing for one of the clubs in Northern Football Federation. So, and it just stuck then. And so I brought that down to Apia, and the crowd expected it. The crowd really got on board with it, to be honest. And in the crowd will also swing their arm after I scored
exactly.
As well. So look, I even got, and this is the truth, I even got an email, not an email, a message from the Football Federation to stop doing it because it incited the crowd. And I'm thinking, no, you're not going to. We in Australia, we need to excite the crowd, and that's what it did. And in many cases in Australia, the crowd even came onto the pitch in a stereo.
Yes.
I wish we could do that these days.
Yes.
Having a cool crowd. When we went to play at places like, you talk about South Melbourne, Sydney Olympic come to Melbourne, almost packed stadium.
Yeah.
Vice versa. South Melbourne come to Sydney, or we had local derbies. We used to play Sydney City or something, or Marconi, or huge crowd, because they were called local derbies, But a Greek team versus a Greek back team back then, huge crowds, And it was a good time to play. It was a good time to be even a supporter, I suppose, at that stage.
Look,
there was something of going to the football, you know,
Mm,
going to the football. It was like a tribal thing, you know.
mm.
You went there with your friends, and you had it was stout following, that's for sure, you know.
Yeah, well,
Yeah,
like I said, I would try and mimic you. You were good with both feet. You could
yeah,
score with the left. You could score with the right. You could score with your head. You could score with volleys. You were quick. You ran into those pockets. The boys would give you a through ball. You were around. You were gone. And it didn't matter what side of the body you was on. You knew how to find the back of the net. How did you get so comfortable in front of goal? Because I see strikers today when they that last minute they tend to rush it, and sometimes they don't get onto it properly.
yeah.
What is it that you had that made it look so simple? Even now, when I watch footage back, it didn't matter what side of the body it was on. You seem so calm the minute you made connection with the ball. What was that?
I do a lot of coaching even now for strikers, especially. Look, I went to Newcastle Jets on a coaching role with Branko Kalina, and I was asked to help the strikers out there, and I used the same philosophies as I was using as a player, and a lot of repetitious training. So you would have, say, I would do at training, isolate training. Sometimes striker, as a goalkeeper, you don't have to train with the team so much, but you need to do that individual training. As you would a goalkeeper coach. I adopted somebody who would actually give me maybe 100 crosses, hit 100 volleys at one training session.
Wait. You're saying that in one training session, you get somebody to ping you 100 balls and you're hitting 100 volleys, one after the other in a session.
One after the other, so you could become so relaxed and almost fall asleep having the same motion. The same with striking a rolling ball, the same with heading. Okay, so I used to itemize training. And something that we neglect in Australia is there are certain facets of football, especially as a striker, and I see it so much in the A-League. A ball comes over, easy header, and it's missed from point blank range. Constantly. You can put the game on, and I guarantee you're bound to see a few absolutely sitters, misses in games that you would say that's just regulation volley. It's a regulation header. It's a regulation side foot. Happens too often.
So can I ask, when you were training, were you doing extras? So the team would train. Would you get somebody to ping you balls and you do volleys or headers or one-on-ones? Tell me about that.
Well, without doubt, look, I was a close friend of Graham Jennings, even an Olympic, and before that, I had other friends at ARPIA, and before that, so on and so on. Well, we used to have a combination that, you need to cross, I need to finish, whether it be balls on the ground, and we used to pull Gary Meyer aside and say, Gary, you could be staying for an extra hour. And that's what I used to do, an extra hour. I've just finished and finishing. And like I said, even the grounds people say, oh, come on, please go home. And I'm saying, no.
We need to turn off the lights. We need to turn off, And you're talking about balance on both sides, because, to me...
Yeah, because you have to train with the team, You also have to have that part away from the team. Look, there were sessions even with Manfred Schaefer that he would say, okay, maybe on a Tuesday night, you go there, do your stuff, join us back on the Wednesday, and we got team shape. Okay, so there are many parts to football, and itemized goalkeeping training is one. I always believe, and we lack this in Australia, itemized striker training, attacking training. We really lack that.
Yeah. So
I actually have a job. I had a job overseas at doing that. I worked with Kaiserslautern in the German league, with pre-season striker training, with Lega Warsaw. They played in the Champions League. I've been there, done some pre-season training with them as well, with the strikers. There are certain places in Europe that are itemised for those subjects.
Yes.
We need to stop that here.
Yes, and I think you think about it, the objective of football is so simple. Okay, score one more goal than the opposition, right?
Yeah.
And so strikers is the reason why worldwide strikers tend to be the highest transfers, the highest paid in whatever league that you are, because they're so critical. But yet, maybe we're neglecting bringing them. So it's about the 1%ers. How can we make them 1%, 2%, 5%, 10% better?
Yeah, look. We have a league at this moment that is detrimental to the development of young players in Australia, and I'll give you the examples. If you have an A-League club, number one, the coach will buy one foreign striker. That's one position in every category, in every single team that we have in Australia, that the position's already taken up. Maybe they buy two strikers, and then there is no position for a young Australian A-League player, striker especially. Okay? So what they do is that they have to go overseas because football in Australia is not here for young strikers. So they have to, can't blame them. Okay? They've got to find a way. Those who can't afford to go overseas or can't get the sponsorship to go overseas fall by the wayside. So we, at this present moment, we are really, really struggling to develop a pathway, especially for strikers. And as you know, you go through the teams, midfielder, the foreign contingent will be 1 to 2 strikers, or a midfielder, or a defender for foreigners.
Yeah, it's the spine. We tend to like the 9, the 10, maybe the 6 or somebody at the centre back, right? So you put them, and goalkeepers. So I think we've had a fantastic experience at goalkeepers, but if you look at the current contingent, the amount of goalkeepers that still come from imports, it's still relatively high, and we've had a fantastic pedigree of producing goalkeepers. We've done really well in that aspect, but we haven't really focused like we do on the goalkeeper training as we do on the striker training, right? It's almost non-existent.
Exactly. And look, I think a lot of the A-League setups have to be accountable for it, you know. Almost like guest people come in to have a go at teaching young strikers to strike a dead ball, which is not the way to go, by the way. It's a far more complex training session than just hitting a ball for the sake of hitting a ball. There's a lot of strategic movements and everything else to look at.
So you had a short stint at Wollongong, only played a few games there, but you probably scored. I think you ended up scoring more goals than you played games.
I did actually.
Yeah, you and then you moved back to Olympic before having a very, I would think, a successful career at.
Bit.
Sorry. You did a short stint back at Olympic before moving to Parramatta and playing for the Melita Eagles there, and playing many games for them and scoring many goals. How was your time there in front of the Parramatta faithful?
Look, that was more like a family club, but it had a good supporter base. I really did enjoy it there, to be honest. I was in a role where Parramatta wasn't a big spending club. I was the highest paid player and probably the biggest transfer they ever had as a player. But I will say this, it was a good club to produce young players.
Yes.
Had a youth system in place. And it did produce a lot of players that no one had ever heard of before that came to the front. Given those young players a chance, people like Chich Mendes, Michael Redder, just to name a few, there were a lot of young players that came through the Parramatta youth system. So I've got to take my hat off to them. They got their act together. They spent their money wisely, but they did produce a lot of good young local talent, that's for sure.
And so
I've got to say, they're a club that really did have a good passionate base, because a lot of those supporters would actually travel and many times by road all the way to Melbourne to watch a
Yes.
game.
Yes, yes. So the Maltese community there are very, very passionate. So fantastic people. So in that span, we've now spanned a decade. You've played many, many times for our country, sir. Against fantastic opposition, and who can forget? I mean, at that time, obviously, we had a hard-nosed coach in Frank Arrock. I don't know if you can comment about how he ran the team during that time.
Look, I can, and I got a lot of time for Frank as well. Good personality as well. We were going through we'll call it metamorphosis, where we were changing from being just a defensive team, just try to just hold on against strong opposition, to actually out and saying, you know what, we can beat some of the best teams in the world. We can beat against some of those elite teams. That you have a look at the Juventus team that we played, and we played the very first time in Melbourne. That hell of a side. You had Paolo Rossi, you had Cabrini, Tardelli, Boniak. There was just a team full of stars, and a lot of those players had just finished a World Cup too, successful World Cup for Italy at that stage.
Right, that was a fiery clash. That was quite fiery.
All three games were unbelievable. Yeah, that's for sure. The very first one, the benchmark for it, though, in Melbourne.
Yes.
In a big crowd, in front of a big crowd.
But I've got to pull you up, Marshall. You're such a big man, right? And there was one time, so it was the left back. I think he hit you in the back of the head, but you went down very easy, right? So did he hit you that hard?
No.
All right.
Yeah. What one thing in that National League we were taught, and I'll go through some of the names. There were some really, really hard players. You know, you look at Robbie Dunn. You look at Steve O'Connor or David Ratcliffe. We knew how to ride the tackles, and we knew how to make the best of it.
All right.
And back then, it was acceptable to go down for a penalty, to go down for a red card, to look for the smallest advantage. You know, and you talk about the 1%, the 2%, the 3%. All those little small things put pressure on the referee. Yeah. They can change the cycle of a game.
Yes.
So, look, every little advantage that you could get out of it, you would try and take it. You know what I mean? And look, you're playing against one of the biggest teams. Look, arguably the best defender, Antonio Cabrini.
Yes.
Marking me.
Yes.
Look, it was an absolutely pleasure. But you remember, he is the best defender in the world at that stage.
Yep.
I've got to unsettle him.
Yes.
I've got to take him away from his comfortable zone, where we can play it a bit. No, you have to compete. You have to try and stretch the rules to the limit. The result.
And the game against the 1984 World Tour, Arsenal came out. I remember looking back at a headline. I think it was 1984, where it says Arsenal 3, Soper 2. Was that one of your better games?
Oh, without doubt. Look, Look, it was a night I enjoyed. There was a few Aussies at the ground as well at Highbury, and you had the England captain, Mark and me, Kenny Sampson. Look, what a star-sided Charlie Nicholas. The really glamour side of that time as well. Arsenal was. I just felt it was one of my favourite teams, Arsenal too, by the way. It was a night that I thought, hang on, I got some friends from Australia that actually came to the game. It was one of those where I was inspired and motivated by the environment around me. Beautiful place, Highbury, by the way.
Yeah.
With history as well, with an awesome amount of history. So it's one of those places you go, yeah, wanted to turn it on tonight. Really wanted to turn it on. Things went my way.
All right. So tell me about. So Donald Howe was the coach of Arsenal at the time.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
that's
So
right.
is it true that he offered you a contract?
Yes, yeah, yeah. Look, I was in a situation where I was juggling things back in Australia as well, and the one thing that happened on the tour, I had my first knee injury, and that later became a major issue, and it actually figuring out I had to get treatment back in Australia. I wasn't going to get it there trialing or showing my exploits there. So it was one of those where I thought, I'll get back to Australia, then I'll make a comeback. Unfortunately, that was in '84, and a couple of years later, I did have a very serious knee injury.
Yes. So who can forget? I think it was March 29, 1987. It was round one, Sydney Olympic versus Sydney City.
That's right.
Where you did your first knee. So just rewind back. You're playing Arsenal. What'd you do? A little bit of meniscus or a little bit of
yeah.
Okay.
Well, it wasn't. Look, it was one of those where I struggled to stand up the next day.
Okay. Yeah.
And the information that I got, you've got to work harder on building your muscles up around your knee to try and protect your knee at that stage.
Yeah.
But it was always going to be a situation where, and actually, to be honest, the following season, even at Olympic, I didn't play as many games because of a knee injury as I did have previously.
Yeah.
So I was selective of certain games which I was played in.
And what people don't understand is, so Marshall, you had your knee problem. Having done a number of knees myself, I know exactly what that can feel like and doing an ACL. But I find that it almost becomes your dark night of the soul. You pop in.
Yep.
Football's over for the year. You get the message. But in '87, this is when surgeries just started in orthopedics for.
Look, I was told by the doctor at that stage, you'd have probably about, he said, 10% chance of ever playing at that level ever again. And gave me probably about, he said, look, to even play park soccer, you're probably looking at around about 25%. So the chances are, now I broke down and cried. I'm not afraid to say that when I first said that, because that was my whole life.
Yes.
I actually know what to do after hearing that. But what it did do, it turned my life around quite substantially.
Yes.
Where fitness and taking fitness for granted was now the number one priority in my life.
Yes.
The rehabilitation, look, I can tell you a story that I was put in a cast, from thigh to just below the knee. And I was also told by the surgeon, he said, look, if it's possible, the sooner you get back and start working on your knee, the better chance you would have to make a full recovery. I actually cut the cast off after 1 week. I was supposed to have it on for a full month. Started by trying to push a telephone book round on the carpet to try to learn to walk. And by the time I actually went back to get the cast off, I was actually already walking.
Wow.
So that obsession to say, yep, I'm not gonna give football away. I love football, totally love football, and I love the life that I have. I don't always think that, but that, what the doctor said to me after the injury, and he said, you never play ever again. I really was focused on and changed my whole way I ate, the way I presented myself was completely different.
So what people don't know, and anybody who's done their knee does know, 1 week of not walking, your muscle will deteriorate to the point where there is no muscle.
Massively.
So it becomes bone and fat. Literally, anybody who's done an ACL would know this, and I've done a couple. You don't walk for 1 week, okay? You've got no muscle left, and it takes a long time to rebuild that strength back. So, and not only, sir, did you come back and prove that doctor wrong, you had some fantastic games and seasons after that. So credit to you, sir. So I just want to backtrack a little bit. Now, there was a time where you were playing for Australia. I think it was 85 or 86. It was the New Zealand campaign, and you got a call up for the national team, and you couldn't play, or you refused to play. What happened there?
Look, the problem with Australian football is that it would cost you dearly to play for your country at that stage. The contracts that we were getting at club level far exceeded what we're getting paid to play in the national team. And unfortunately, even the World Cup qualifiers coincide with many of the games that you're playing in Australia.
Yeah.
Look, and I said to the federation, I said, look, it's unfair. I don't know if you remember that we actually played before that. We played Red Star Belgrade in a round robin.
Yes.
Okay.
What a series.
We won that series. We won the series.
You scored a goal. I think you got a goal, and you tapped it around and you ran around. Good goal.
Yeah. Well, we were supposed to get a cut of the prize money. We didn't. The federation refused to pay us for it as well. And this was a stage where I was going, look, if that's not the scenario, is that you're not going to even pay us for our time and commitment to the thing. Sure, our clubs were paying us, but our clubs were our sole provider at that moment, financial provider. The federation weren't coming to the fore. So I went on my own sort of protest. And as it was, the coach, Frank Urach, took it the wrong way. And so it was one where I was alienated from the national team. But standing up, and I still believe, for the right reason.
And you know what? You've always been a maverick, and my hat off to you, sir. Good on you. So, you've played with some fantastic players, right? Who was your best roomie?
The best roomie. Look, I spent a lot of the time with Graham Jennings.
Yep.
But look, there was a thing still called the Olympic Connection. Okay. The Olympic Connection was we used to get together when we went away on trips and everything else. Just kill the boredom, play cards together, and it was play for Manila. It was like very, very small change and stuff.
Two card Manila or 3 card Manila? Which would you play? 3 card Manila. All right. So 100% it was the Greeks that showed you that game.
Yes,
of course it would have been 3 card Manila.
I don't want to give names. Rasco was number 1.
Yes.
Rascopoulos.
Yes.
Graham Jennings, myself, and there was always a few others that would join in. We would always, like I said, it would always be in our room. And but it was fun. It was to kill the boredom at that stage and everything else, and it gives us a sense of camaraderie as well.
Of course, yeah. So this is before the days of PlayStation. What do the boys play now? They play PlayStation or FIFA when they're downtime. Of course, back in the day, you play cards, right? It just makes sense. So as a 30. So what are we? We're at 30, 31. You make your first overseas move to Malaysia.
Yeah, 31. That's Malaysia.
31. Or 30 or 31? You
30, I think it was 30, yeah. Okay. I went to Perak in Malaysia and had very success with, there was 2 of us that went, 2 from Australia. One was Rod Brown, quite a good player. We both went to Penang and I had a good season. I won the Golden Boot there. Successful. Season finishes, come back to Parramatta. Then I went there back to Malaysia, but I played for a team called Perak.
Yes.
which is a strong team, and it's a team that I still have a lot of connection with, and a lot of fond memories, and because I went back there on a coaching stint as well.
But wait, what people may not know, when you say you went back, it seems like it was like 3 weeks later. You went back a number of years later as a 34, 35-year-old.
1990s, no, it was older than that. I went back there at 36, turning 37.
Wow.
Yeah.
So you're playing Malaysian First Division, right? Well, most blokes have hang up the boots, right?
Yeah.
You've got a first team football in Malaysia. Brilliant.
Yeah. Successful year too. I actually think that year, that one of my best years of football, and I'll tell you why it was one of my best. I didn't win the Golden Boot, but the team had struggled because at that stage there was in Perak there was a bribery scandal, and our team was decimated. We lost 12 players, 12 local players were banned from the league. And so we were reduced to only having young players from the under-21s come into the side.
Yep.
So we only had a basis of probably 6 first-team players that stayed, including the foreigners.
Yep.
And one boy from Melbourne, or formerly from Dave Miller, was the goalkeeper. Joe Coletta.
Okay.
My roommate.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, good friend, good guy, truly good guy.
Yeah.
And myself, and we finished in the playoffs, and I think we finished third that year. It was a very successful year because we were decimated. Everybody picked us to run last, and we ran third in I think it was about 14 or 16 team competition, something like that. But it was strong.
It's amazing. So it's amazing what happens in those Asian leagues with the bribery and the scandal, and it's very un-Australian, obviously, but interesting how some of those Asian countries operate. Yeah, but highly fanatical supporters, right? So
look, we had. At the moment, there is an Australian there right now. Mehmet Durakovic is the coach, the head coach for Iraq. Yeah, did quite well. I spoke to Mehmet last year. I went and watched them play in I was guest of honour for the semi-final of the Malaysian Cup because I'd actually coached a few of their younger players.
Good.
In that. So it was beautiful to see Mehmet and to see the crowd, and had a few photos with the crowd and supporters there who remember me quite fondly, and it was brilliant. It was really good.
That's beautiful. So, who would you say in all the teams that you've played with was your best strike partner? Because back in the day, we normally played 4 at the back, 4 across the middle, and 2 boys up front, right? That's normally how we played. Who would you say was your best strike partner?
Okay. All right. Now, if I was to say at Olympic, one foreigner guest player came in, Davey Proven.
Okay.
Davey Proven was, played for Celtic, and was an absolute master. Just won the FA Cup and then came the next flight over and made guest appearances. He was phenomenal. He was one of those dribblers that could get the ball from the halfway line, dribble half the team and score. Local player. There's a few that come to mind. I think Jim Patikas was clever.
Jimmy.
Jimmy was a clever player. Up front, I did a lot of solo stuff myself up front.
Oh, yeah, of course. Yeah, all
right. Let me see. Up here, we had some good players there. We had people like Phil O'Connor.
Yes.
But was an excellent. He's a left winger, left foot, but very classy. Sebastian Impala was a good player, very skillful. Many people might not even know who he is, but very skillful in the day. Came across a number of players that could the bill. Let me see. The Australian national team, I thought Graham Arnold was decent enough.
Yes.
That's for sure. Yeah, look, come across a few of the players playing alongside, yeah.
And now we're opening up the 11. Who has been the best player you've played with in any team? Who would you say was the best player that you played with?
Best player played with. Now, I'll say foreigner first, okay? And I'll go with a player that played at Parramatta Eagles, Washington Gonzalez.
Yes.
Washington played for the, not many people know this, you know, he played 80-odd internationals for the Uruguay team.
Yes.
Most of them as captain as well.
Yes.
Most of them as captain.
Quality.
Absolutely.
What was training like when if the forwards were playing defenders, you against him? What did that go down like?
We're very close friends, I'll tell you right now. Always would. Magnificent human being off the field, total competitor on the field.
Mm-hmm.
Had the strike of the ball. I could not believe a defender could strike the ball that well. But he would shoot where other people would say, well, it's a cross. It should be a cross from the sideline. He'd have a shot. And he would surprise everybody.
Quality.
I actually up for goal of the year, I think in 1991, he might have been up for a free kick that he hit. I think it was against Adelaide City.
Mm-hmm.
I'm pretty sure. And I think Zabika was in goals that day too.
Yeah, not a slouch, right? So, yeah. And
so
and Aussie, who's the best Aussie that you would say, the best Aussie that you played with?
Played with, I'll tell you now. In the Australian team, Oscar Carino.
Wow. So for me, being a Melbourne boy and growing up, obviously, you know, you're a Sydney boy, so we had to, you know, as an idol, Oscar Carino, my idol. I wanted to be like him. I wanted to play like him. I thought he was
a class act.
Magician.
Absolutely. Class act, man.
Yes, yeah. Magician on the park. And so, and I heard him apparently a real jokester as well. Off the park. Yeah,
he's a good guy. He's a truly good guy. Gentleman as well, by the way.
Fantastic. So, and you had many great games. Who can forget about that game against Tottenham, where you tore up the park that day? It was fantastic. What do you remember when I say Marshall Soper playing for Australia against Tottenham?
I remember the defender, I think it was Miller, the defender, just bumping him off. I can't remember the goal, but I'm pretty sure that I gave me a little bit of room at the far post. Look, I'm just going off memory and just been able to slot it past there. Tottenham was a class time. By the way, I think they'd just won the UEFA Cup.
Mm-hmm.
So when they came to Australia, they were the UEFA Cup holders at that stage. It's round about that time. So, good team. There's some great players in that side, you know, really good players. Aussie Dealers was there. Player.
You know what? At the time, you boys held up pretty well, right? The Aussie side.
Again, good teams. Geez, they were good teams.
Good teams. Uh-huh. And you know what? You guys didn't look out of place. And at times, you actually looked like you guys had the dominance, right?
Yeah.
You weren't out of place at all. So it's interesting if only we weren't on the arse end of the world, right? So in Australia, if the Aussie boys was in the middle of Europe, right, you'd all be playing for these big sides. So, you had obviously a fantastic career for Australia, scoring many goals, obviously for our country and representing our time where we played obviously against other countries, but also a lot of these games against top teams. Okay, you guys held your own. So I take my hat off to all of you. So let's slightly shift gears, because you've touched on coaching throughout this conversation. And we're going to shift gears a little bit, because after you stopped playing, you went into coaching. So tell me about your first coaching role.
Yeah. Well, look, the first coaching job was a connection from Sydney Olympic. It was a Greek club with Belmont Hercules. And look, it was a club it's not rated highly, but I took on the role and we did okay and that sort of stuff. And then I took a job at Fairfield Bulls, a connection from the Fairfield area. We won the premiership and won the finals and all that. So got promoted to the New South Wales Premier League here. Had some times there. Look, I sort of went into the field of, look, at that stage, I joined an academy here, which is Soccer Master Australia,
That's
which
right.
was run through the Blacktown Olympic Park project.
Mm-hmm.
So the facilities were first rate. The setup was excellent, absolutely excellent. So I got into that side of it, and I got a feeling, and I got the drive to say, okay, I would like to create a certain pathway for young players. And I was trying to analyze, why can't we produce Cristiano Ronaldo? Why can't we produce a Messi in Australia? Mm-hmm. And there are certain things. So I did a lot of studying, and I tried to touch on certain areas that other people hadn't, because they were coaching teams, not individuals. Mm-hmm. And this is what I came to the conclusion of, spending more time with young players on trying to create something, and trying to speak with other clubs and turn other clubs to producing a pathway, a clear pathway, because we have certain issues with doing well from, say, 6 to 12, from 12 to 14, 15, and then it breaks down. The transition period, okay, from young players to get to the first team. And that was a big one for me, is that how can we make the transition so those players that do well, look, we've always done well under 16 competitions throughout the whole world. But from there to the first team, there seems to be a huge gap, and a lot of players fall by the wayside. So what I was thinking of is joining football clubs and joining their youth setups. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And I've been doing more of that of late, and even worked overseas in Perak. I was doing that overseas, is developing young players into the first team, and I had a huge amount of success, especially at Perak, where I think the youth team there, we produced something like 8 players for the first team in 1 year.
Wow.
The following played first team, so that was highly successful. And now that I'm at another club, years down the track at Yangon United, we had very successful first couple of years, very successful, not from just the first team, but right through. So I'm trying to think of a way where we can maybe develop that in Australia. What we have is those connections where you look at my story of playing first team football at 15, 9 months. Can it be done here? And there are certain things, and there are roadblocks that stop us from doing that, producing very, very young players into a first team, hence maybe an A-League club. There are a lot of things that's stopping us from doing that, and that is we don't have those development clubs as we did in the 80s.
Yes.
Now, when I say development clubs, you would have teams like, lesser clubs that would say have to adopt a young policy.
Yes.
Okay. There were those clubs, South Melbourne or Olympic, which produced young players, but remember, they were all about winning. You had clubs like Blacktown City, which would go youth policy.
Yes.
Parramatta had a youth policy because it wasn't an expending club.
Yeah.
There were many clubs in Melbourne that produced tremendous young players. Even when Heidelberg was on the tail end, Preston were on the tail end, they still produced their sets of brilliant young players. Brilliant young players. It's not happening now. It's not happening.
And the interesting thing, when you produce a young player who's come up the junior ranks, they play for the jersey, right? When they make that first team, right, they're going to kiss the jersey, right? We forget that there's a certain there's a certain benefit about developing a young boy. You could go out and hire Dad's Army to play for you, and that might save you your job as a senior coach. But are you going to then have ultimate success? Can you actually, as a first team coach, have gall and say, because right now there's no relegation out of the A-League, to say to your board as a first team coach, let's say, for example, if you're one of the lower clubs, and say, look, we've got nothing to lose, right? Yeah. We're going to play kids, okay? We're going to have a spine, maybe 4, 5, 6 experienced players in our squad. But the rest of the boys, we're going young. We're going to get the best young talent and give them minutes. Yeah. And after 12 months, let's see where these boys are at, because they need a whole year in the system.
Yeah, no doubt you're on the right track. Look, even some of the bigger clubs I was at, you look at St Olympic. Chris Galantis joined us at 16 years of age.
Wow.
Doherty brought him in. Tommy Doherty brought him in at 16 years of age.
Yes.
Did he make it? Yes. Was he a star player? Yes.
Yes.
Overseas, successful.
Yeah.
There's your story there. Okay. And we don't give that anymore. We don't give it any credence anymore. It's the same. You know? Look, it's shame on our philosophies on football clubs. You know, you talk about A-League clubs. You have a look at the foreigners that we bring in. They're aged pensioners in some cases. You know, and they're not successful. In many cases, they're not successful. There are those individuals, you know, that full of class. You know, you look at Del Piero and people like that. Never going to question that.
Yes.
You know that. That add to the league. They do add to the league. Without question, they add to the league. But there are those foreigners that stop young players from, especially young Australian players, of going forward in the game. And that's a shame. It's a real shame.
And you know? And this is also perpetuating down the leagues. This is not just an A-League problem. But if you look at, let's say, you go to NPL and then even State 1 and then State 2, there's blokes who are leaving park football to play in, let's say, England or, you know, or wherever to come play the league because they make an earn here.
They can. Absolutely. Now you can. Yeah, you can. It's a real shame that, like I said, we have to correct so much in Australian football. And it's a real eye-opener when I do work overseas and I see the club I'm with right now, the youth policy in place. It's a fanatical youth policy where everything is built. Look, I can tell you a story about Yangon United. We have internationals that come from our academy that are still at our football club. We have something like 6 internationals in our under-19s, 7 internationals at 21, and I think 6 internationals in our first team. You know, they've all come through our academy.
Wow.
All come through the academy. I believe our club is one of the biggest. I think it's the biggest in the country, but the academy situation is massive over there. It's what they survive on. Yeah, what they survive on.
And there's no reason why we can't adopt this philosophy in Australia, because we want to have, we talk about this revolving door of players going from club to club to club. If you create an environment whereby you're going to look after your players and then promote them and give them minutes, they'll also give you their heart. And when they play, they're not just, it's not just about the money, and obviously the money is an element, but there is a pleasure for playing for your club. I think
one thing the National League gave us, it gave us patriotic fans. Patriotic, and I'll tell you why. Because whether it be, I just want to give you examples. Sydney United was known as Sydney Croatia at one stage.
Yep.
Now, a Croatian player didn't want to play for Marconi. They wanted to play for Sydney Croatia.
Yes.
That was their number one goal, because there was that cultural thing. If they wanted to, the Greeks, they wanted to play for Sydney Olympic, South Melbourne, Heidelberg.
Yes.
Of course, it's a cultural thing. They could see the supporters really push their sons and their to make it and to be a part of that cultural thing. And it was. I'm not saying that we need to diverse the country into ethnic minorities, but what was stamped out of Australia was the history of the game, which was founded, and let's be totally honest, it was founded on those
migrant communities. The migrant
Absolutely.
communities that came and supported the English settlement of the people who
Brilliant.
Yes.
Brilliant in the way you put it, by the way. I couldn't have said it better. That's what we need here. We need it even now. We need that cultural thing, or that
tribalism
tribal thing where we have, if you live in the western of Sydney, you support Western Sydney.
Yes.
If you live in Melbourne City, you support Melbourne City or Melbourne Victory.
Yes.
You don't support other teams, but here in Australia, unfortunately, we support teams from afar.
Yeah.
That is.
And this is the thing, we've lost that sort of the belonging to a club.
Yeah.
And now, like I see some of my friends, like, the Melbourne Victory and then the Melbourne City, and now they're Western United, and because it's so easy to change teams. It's like, it's like a basketball team now, right? Whoever's winning, I'm changing the team, right? So that tribalism where you say, okay, I'm this club and I'm this club till I die, right, is gone from the game a bit, right? So there's an element where the authorities, I think certain groups have tried to make tribalism happen. If you look at, let's say, for example, Western Sydney Wanderer fans who were probably, I would say, the most passionate Melbourne Victory fans, right? We're trying to quash that a bit, right? Because it doesn't fit with our, our current day norms of what we want football to look like, right? We want to sanitize our passion. And I think we need to relax our viewpoint of what is acceptable behavior.
Well, I'll tell you now, what makes English game is the fans. Always will. If you turn on the TV now, it's a shame we're through COVID, but there are no fans. The element and the atmosphere is lost to a certain degree.
Yeah.
Everybody will still follow their favourite team, yes, but you cannot tell me that the hype of the crowd being there and being in amongst the crowd doesn't excite you to want to come back and come back and come back and see the product.
Yes.
And see the end result of football, and that is what I'd like to see happen to a lesser extent, I suppose, in Australian football, is that passion brought back in there, that tribalism brought back in there, and it's a selling point. It's what the sponsors want to see.
Of course.
And this is how you generate interest. This is how you sell TV rights as well.
Yeah.
It's the hysteria of the whole thing. You've got to create the hysteria. We lack that, unfortunately. At this moment.
We've got to encourage that sort of that tribalism, that active, right? So these kids who want to get out and scream and yell for their team and chant for 90 minutes, you've got to let them chant, right? It's exactly why it's exactly what made the tribalism of the NSL. You had groups chanting at the end of the goals, and so after you scored a goal, you could run up to them, right, and celebrate. That's where the interaction happens, right?
And they would appreciate it, and they want to come back. They want that engagement with their players, and this don't do in Australia at the moment. The fans don't engage with the players. They're not part of it. You mentioned Sydney Wanderers. I agree. West Sydney Wanderers have that thing where they engage with their players. They want to. Melbourne Victory, yes, but then it comes a long way down the ladder. Way down the ladder. For the next teams. No, you don't see it.
Yes, we need more tribalism like we did in the NSL. I think there's certain aspects that we can gain from our history and then mold it back into what it is now. But I really want to focus on, you were in Myanmar, you're technical director there. Yeah. So I'm a junior coach. What advice do you have for the coaches that are listening on here? You've talked about, you've got your team. You need to teach principles, but how do we adapt to developing the individual within our junior sides?
Good point. Look, I'm going I've just seen a few training sessions, even here in Australia, since I've been back. We have coaches that do A, B, and C licenses and that sort of stuff. But one of the important elements that are missing from some of these coaches is the ability to manage. When I say managing and coaching are two different things,
Yes.
completely long way apart. To be able to manage the resources, to manage the coaching staff around you, the head coach must be able to say and have faith in their assistant coaches to do that job. And their job, the head coach's job, is to oversee all that. They're not do that, nor are they able to manage the training pitch itself, or the players manage the players. Okay, we have team managers and that sort of stuff, but the head coach must be able to become more of a manager role. And as a technical director, my job is to make sure all that is coordinated from, and there are links to all these other avenues, a link between the youth coaches and the first team. There has to be, we call all the coaches in, and everything's on a monthly basis, and all the coaches on a level playing field. They all get time, and no one speaks out of term because it's overseen by a neutral auditor, okay, for that matter. So this is some of the things that are lacking here, is that not everything is just about coaching. We know that, yeah, we know you must kick a ball this way, or you must have a team shape this way, or that sort of stuff. That's part of coaching rhetoric and coaching licenses and all that sort of stuff, and years of knowledge, you know. But one thing lacking in this country is, and I'm saying from junior level, especially junior level, how many really young coaches who are coaching 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, we'll say around 12-year marks, know how to manage everything at single training session. And that's something I'm observing right now, is so we have some good young kids. Now, how do we manage them? The coaches go, okay, we have this sort of a training session, but they're not managing those training sessions. You might have coaches with a quarter of a training park. So there might be 4 training sessions on a one football field. How do I manage that space?
Okay.
How do I manage the players? How do I manage my assistant coach? How do I manage the parents? They don't have the full education on it. Unfortunately, that's what we lack here as well. And some become despondent because it doesn't always work out that way. Football coaching is getting to the park early, you do your training session, you're last to leave, but then you go home and you have to work extra hard when you're at home for the next training session.
Yes.
So it's a thing that if you truly love the game like we do, is that you're constantly turned on. Your mind switched on. It is working and working and working on, you know what, I have this player. How do I develop this player into getting all the way a smooth path for him to get to the first team? Because look, I also believe that coaching youth is more about winning than coaching individual. I asked my youth team coaches, how many players do you produce? I don't care if they don't win the league, but do you know they're successful in the teams anyway, the status of the team. But all I ask is that we give them the technical equipment and the technical opportunity to produce. I want 3 players every year from our youth teams to go up to another level, whether they go up to the 19s or the 21s or the first team. I expect my club to have the hardcore of young players from our city playing in our first team. You know what our supporters want? They want to see our local players playing in their team. They don't want to see a team bought from elsewhere to come and play and represent their town. They want to see local product. They want to see local players. And I believe this is that I don't care what state you're from, what city you're from, but you want to see, if you're from Newcastle or you're from Sydney, you want to, if I'm from Newcastle, I want to see all my players develop through the football grades in Newcastle and play for Newcastle, because as a supporter, I want to see someone out there that I actually know.
Mm.
And that's an important thing. That's where you get the tribal supporter from. They come and see their local boy doing well, scoring goals, saving goals,
Yes.
but they want to see their product is local. They don't want to see a bought team.
Wisdom of the ages. This has been a very deep and thorough conversation about football, you're playing past, but also what is needed. There's been some advice here for not just top level clubs, but you can use this advice. Doesn't matter what division you're in the country. Okay, so developing your junior system, because every club's got a junior system, right? Or most club, the vast majority have got ages in all the ranks. And so how we can take those boys from 16s to 17s, 17s to reserve football to the first team. And like you said, every year, if you can produce 3 players, before you know it, the whole team's yours, right? You don't need to bring anybody from outside. And you get that tribalism, that wanting the people to say, these are our boys. So I look at my club, the club that I spent, the vast majority of my time in, and I think about the success that we had, and when that team played really well. The vast majority was when the boys in the first team came from the junior system, and they were all mates. They're all mates.
Of course. That's how it is. Is that everybody wants to play, and they want to play for a shirt. Deep down, that's always their dream. As a young kid, you want to play for your hometown. You want to represent not just your parents, not just your family, but your friends. Outside your friends, you want your whole town to be behind you, because you want to be able to walk down the street and everybody want to acknowledge you. You want that. Yeah. You want that. And there's nothing better. There is nothing better. I'll tell you now.
And what advice do you have for players? Okay, because you've done it all, and you played at the highest level, and you probably, in my mind, you could have played even at a higher level, right? So it was decisions that you made that
of course.
that you decided. Listen, I'm not going to play for this team, but what advice do you have for the 12 and 15 and 16-year-old kid who might be watching here?
Well, look, there is, we live in Australia. Understand that we live in Australia. Understand that you are coached to a certain level. Now, if your desires are much higher than and you aspire to play at the very, very highest level, you must be able to, one, separate your mind from a team's environment to an individual environment. Now, what I mean by that is that you must be able to go out and train or grab a coach, an individual situation where you might have to itemize certain role which you want to play, whether it be midfield, striker, goalkeeper, defender. Get the best person around you. Get isolated training, okay? Because we are an island a long way from Europe, a long way from the rest of the world. So we have to simulate training environments that they have in Europe. Mm-hmm. That means you're going to have to try to work every single day at the game. The most difficult game to play is football, without doubt. Number one game in the world is football. Most played sport. So everybody is trying to get that opportunity to play for Manchester United, Barcelona, Real Madrid, one of the top clubs. If I go into a classroom and say, put your hand up, those who want to play for Manchester United, everybody puts their hand up. But there might be that one person who says, yes, I'm prepared to be obsessed by trying to play. That means I'm prepared, while everybody is out in the park flying a kite, I'm prepared to actually go out and train extra. I'm prepared to run an extra mile. Be obsessed by trying to make it. Be passionate about being a footballer. Be passionate about being a doctor, a lawyer, whichever field or direction you want to take. But you have to be passionate about it. Spend more hours than the other person. That's the advice I give him.
So, fantastic wisdom, fantastic advice. Somebody who some would call a loner, I would call a maverick, who's extremely principled in his views, but somebody who displayed hard work and passion. The great Marshall Soper. Thank you very much, sir, for your time. It's been an absolute honour. I hope the people who watch this get as much pleasure as I did.
Thank you very much, Sasha. Thank you very much. Pleasure.
Brilliant.